Have you ever wondered why a book so ancient and seemingly harmless could shift your perception of reality to the point that certain elites would prefer you never read it? With more than 2,500 years of tradition, this book brings together 423 teachings that, according to historical records, were seen as threatening to various authoritarian regimes during the Khmer Rouge regime in Cambodia. From 1975 to 1979, an estimated 25,000 Buddhist monks were persecuted or killed, and the destruction of temples and sacred texts were encouraged, all to suppress the liberating force of this wisdom. Why? These verses don't just teach virtues, they also show ways to master the mind, awaken critical consciousness, and ultimately reprogram how you see the world. If controlling the masses depends on ignorance and fear, just think about the threat posed by a kind of knowledge that fosters self-reflection and spiritual autonomy to those who profit from misinformation. Once you grasp what lies behind this book, you start realizing there are real reasons why certain people don't want its teachings to spread. Maybe the true key to shaping your own reality is right in the message they're trying so hard to keep from you.
The most powerful mind control weapons ever created are not just social media, corporate news outlets, or religious doctrines. Instead, they revolve around the systematic concealment of ancient knowledge that can make the human mind aware of its own power. Among these teachings, one stands out for its profound impact and the way it has been kept off the radar of open debate, the Dhammapada. This collection of 423 verses, attributed to the historical Buddha, has existed for more than 2 millennia as one of the most liberating documents ever compiled. Even so, very few people in the West know about it. Hardly any universities include it in philosophy curricula, and it is rare to see references to its teachings in political or corporate speeches. This relative obscurity in Western thought raises questions. Why do so many entities, from corporations to traditional religious systems, avoid broadly promoting the Dhammapada? It seems to go beyond mere cultural disinterest. There appears to be a pattern of marginalizing something potentially revolutionary. We are what we think. Everything we are arises from our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make our world. The opening verse of the Dhammapada reveals something essential. The power to create reality starts with the individual mind. When this understanding is truly taken in, it redefines our relationship to external promises of salvation or threats that prop up different forms of influence. Throughout history, power structures have understood one basic truth. People who realize their own inner potential are less likely to buy into empty solutions, bow down to arbitrary authorities, or sacrifice themselves for hollow ideologies. Those who recognize their mental autonomy pose a genuine threat to systems that rely on large-scale psychological manipulation. This situation brings up some intriguing questions. Why have so many never heard of these teachings? Why, while the self-help industry offers an endless array of quick, superficial advice, does the Dhammapada rarely surface as an indispensable resource for those seeking real personal development? A closer investigation suggests that this knowledge not only empowers the individual, but also challenges the logic of control in many modern institutions. Unlike works that preach obedience to external authorities or materials that promise material success through instant formulas, the Dhammapada puts the power of transformation directly in the practitioner's own hands. Neither father nor mother nor any other relative can do as much good as a well-directed mind. Even today, this kind of statement sounds radical. It goes against the idea that happiness or fulfillment depends on external factors. In a society where most people take this perspective to heart, there would be less room for manipulative propaganda, out-of-control consumerism, and artificial divisions. That would shake the foundation of many business models and structures that thrive on human insecurities and on selling external fixes for deep-seated problems. Why does certain knowledge remain sidelined even though its effectiveness has been documented for centuries. Why are we distracted by shallow, quick-fix methods of instant happiness while inner transformation tools are ignored? Around 2,500 years ago, while empires were battling for territory and wealth, a quiet shift in ways of thinking began to emerge on the Indian subcontinent. It was a time when philosophical innovations sprang up almost simultaneously, including the Upanishads in India, Confucius and Lao Tzu in China, and the pre-Socratics in Greece, almost as if there were a collective wave of consciousness rising in different cultures. Amid this creative fervor, the Dhammapada stood out in a revolutionary way. While many philosophical systems relied on complex theologies or elaborate rituals, this Buddhist collection offered something refreshingly simple: an invitation to observe directly the nature of the mind and the human experience without resorting to intermediaries. Just as a bee gathers nectar and moves on without harming the flower, its color, or its fragrance, so should the wise live in this world. These verses provide a clear glimpse into Dhammapada's approach, an accessible language that holds immense depth. This apparent simplicity operates like a Trojan horse of ideas, paving the way for perceptions capable of radically shifting traditional views of reality. It is interesting to note this paradox. Many esoteric traditions envelop their teachings in elaborate symbols and veiled language, while the Dhammapada delivers transformative insights in verses that are easy to grasp. Why does such an accessible body of knowledge remain practically invisible to the majority of people? Some scholars propose that truly transformative teachings often appear incredibly simple at first glance, and that is exactly why they tend to be overlooked. If something does not require huge intellectual leaps, many assume it must be trivial. However, experience shows that the more straightforward the message, the greater its power to spark internal upheavals, as long as it is deeply considered. Historian Arnold Toynbee, in his study of civilization's rise and fall, pointed out that Buddhism was an attempt to resolve the dilemma of human existence in a completely new way. According to him, the Dhammapada does not teach escape from reality, but rather an even deeper dive into day-to-day experience. Unlike traditions that revolve around rigid dogmas, the Dhammapada urges the reader to investigate personally. Do not believe in anything simply because you have heard it, but after observation and analysis, when you find that something agrees with reason and leads to the good and benefit of all, accept it and live up to it. This autonomous mindset challenges systems that thrive on dependence upon official interpretations. Providing accessible wisdom that encourages intellectual freedom changes the balance between institutions and individuals. The Dhammapada's apparent simplicity is actually its most subversive quality. Presenting crucial truths in such a clear way removes the mystical veil that could otherwise keep a wider audience away. Perhaps this simple and direct characteristic explains why power structures keep it at the margins, since it promotes the kind of awareness that conflicts with the passivity certain institutions desire. At the core of the Dhammapada lies a concept so deep that when fully understood, it dismantles the divisions that shape today's world. This concept, non-duality, refers to the direct experience, not just an intellectual idea, that the boundaries between me and other, inside and outside, or right and wrong, are mental constructions, not absolute realities. When the Dhammapada says, "Hate never ends through hate, but only through love," it is not just giving a moral ideal, but spotlighting a fundamental law of consciousness. It is the perception of separation that fuels so many conflicts. This line of thought resonates in almost every social and political system, all based on polarization. Countries define themselves in opposition to other countries. brands compete to stand out. Institutional religions define who is inside and who is outside. Political parties are built on ideological divisions. The more separation is emphasized, the more people are motivated by fear of the different. By dissolving the belief that we are isolated entities, the Dhammapada not only cultivates inner peace, but also disrupts the machinery that feeds social polarization. One who sees themselves in everyone and everyone in themselves overcomes the great illusion. In practical terms, this state of mind makes a person less susceptible to manipulations driven by fear, anger, or tribalism. It is striking how many resources are poured into reinforcing identity barriers. Advertisements drive wedges between consumer groups. Political and religious narratives highlight differences rather than similarities. It is a way to get people to unite against them, whoever they might be, which proves to be an effective control tactic. Researchers like Ken Wilber have noted that many psychological and social imbalances come from rigid mental boundaries that break the world into seemingly independent pieces. Written centuries before any academic framework, the Dhammapada already presented a hands-on solution, the direct experience of non-duality to transcend these illusory frontiers. The non-duality in the Dhammapada is thus a powerful antidote to divisive tactics. When it is genuinely understood, this teaching not only brings about extraordinary personal well-being, but also challenges everything that depends on fear to stay intact. Ancient accounts claim, "Carry the Dhammapada with you the way a warrior carries a sword." Many might dismiss this as superstition, but underneath that directive lies a clever strategy for mental resilience, something that is priceless in our era of information overload and digital manipulation. What many fail to realize is that this text was not meant for passive worship. It was created as a practical tool to help during moments of anxiety, distraction, or the bombardment of external influences. Sometimes, reading just 2 or 3 verses of the Dhammapada at the right moment can bring a person's mind back to a state of discernment, calm, and compassion. Watch your thoughts, for they become words. Watch your words, for they become actions. Watch your character, for it becomes your destiny. In passages like this, the Dhammapada clearly maps out how our mental states shape our reality. In a world drowning in algorithms, all fighting for our attention, this simplicity acts like a beacon. Some people try, for instance, reading 3 Dhammapada verses before checking the news or social media. Often, those few seconds of connecting with teachings that inspire clarity can make a significant difference in how we respond to the typical emotional triggers in today's digital landscape. Studies in neuroscience indicate that even brief contemplative practices, including focused reading of uplifting material, can activate the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain tied to critical thinking and emotional control. This makes us less vulnerable to messages carefully crafted to spark automatic fear, anger, or desire. In the past, humans mostly worried about physical survival. Now, one major threat is the colonization of consciousness by external forces that aim to control us. In that sense, weaving Dhammapada readings into our daily routines can be just as essential as maintaining a healthy diet or exercising. It serves as a type of preventive mental hygiene. Compare how you feel after hours of passively consuming manipulative content versus how you feel after a few minutes of intentional reading that promotes mindful thinking. You will clearly see just how valuable our attention is and why it is so fiercely contested. Many modern systems of influence are meticulously designed to trap the mind and reduce its ability to question the status quo. The Dhammapada, on the other hand, offers a structure with the opposite objective: to free consciousness from all the conditioning that causes suffering. A rarely discussed dimension in academic circles is just how brilliant the Dhammapada's organization is. Its 423 verses are spread across 26 chapters, arranged in a sequence that seems carefully designed to lead the reader through a path of self-discovery and liberation. You can see this sequence as a map. It starts with the pairs, describing the mental dynamic of dualities, then moves through topics like mindfulness, ethical conduct, and impermanence, until it peaks in the chapter of the enlightened one. Each stage of this journey unveils insights and practices that, once absorbed, dismantle deeply rooted conditioning. This framework operates on multiple levels. A beginner finds practical guidelines for interpersonal relationships. An intermediate student recognizes patterns that question basic assumptions, and an advanced practitioner may see each verse as a trigger for non-conceptual insight. It is almost like a software developer carefully removing bugs from an operating system. Each chapter nudges the reader toward a purer version of themselves. When compared to the design of social networks, for instance, the contrast is striking. While social platforms are built for dopamine boosts and addictive engagement, the Dhammapada encourages self-awareness and freedom from fleeting stimuli. Or, if you compare it to political narratives that highlight divisions, you see that the Dhammapada aims to dissolve mental boundaries. This world is blind, few here see clearly. Before rebuilding a reader's vision, the text highlights the blindness in which we usually live. Each chapter, therefore, reorients how reality is perceived, shining a light on the blind spots that keep humans stuck in the same patterns. For centuries, contemplative traditions have intuited what modern neuroscience is now beginning to confirm. The human brain is adaptable, constantly reorganizing itself according to our experiences in a process we now call neuroplasticity. What we are today comes from our thoughts of yesterday, and our present thoughts build our life of tomorrow. Our life is the creation of our mind. This early line from the Dhammapada is not just a poetic flourish, it describes a biological mechanism. Recurring thought patterns shape neural connections, influencing how we see and respond to the world. Brain imaging studies show that regular meditation, including deep engagement with works like the Dhammapada, leads to physical changes in areas associated with sustained attention, emotional balance, and empathy. Meanwhile, the circuits linked to primitive reactivity and egocentric processing may tone down. These findings carry important implications. A big part of modern mass manipulation methods, from ad-driven algorithms encouraging consumerism to political rhetoric playing on insecurities, relies on the brain's automatic reactions. This is why so many resources go into leveraging fear, anger, or desire in a way that does not leave space for more deliberate thought. A person who deliberately strengthens higher brain functions through practices aligned with the Dhammapada effectively rewires their brain to be less susceptible to such tactics. It is no exaggeration to say that this ancient text can serve as a genuine mental recalibration manual, intuitively anticipating what Western science would only confirm much later. There is no fire like passion. There is no loss like hatred. There is no pain like the aggregates of existence. There is no happiness beyond peace. When you truly reflect on statements like these, you are not merely taking in concepts, you are literally reorganizing neural pathways toward a more balanced state. Uncomfortable questions arise. Why do some corporations promote mindfulness programs aimed just at boosting productivity and lowering healthcare costs, yet fail to encourage deeper insights that might call into question how these companies operate? Why teach superficial snippets of meditation techniques without mentioning the radical transformation the Dhammapada invites? The answer is fairly obvious. Small doses of meditation can improve performance in the current system, but fully embracing the Dhammapada's path can create a mindset that questions and transcends the structures of control and exploitation themselves. Put simply, this tradition provides tools that, if taken seriously, will realign personal and collective values. That is definitely not in the interest of those trying to maintain the status quo. Among the Dhammapada's most striking statements is this: greater than defeating 1,000 times 1,000 men in battle is the victory over oneself. This is not just a poetic turn of phrase, it is a seismic challenge to the scale of values most accepted today. Our society usually measures success by external achievements: test scores, credentials, job titles, wealth, follower counts, or political and military power. Each of these reinforces the idea that a person's value depends on how many people they influence or how many resources they stack up. The Dhammapada, in contrast, proposes a major shift. The real battle is not fought outside, but within, where impulses and conditioning can lead us astray. Not even a god, a Gandharva, nor Mara with Brahma can overturn the victory of one who has conquered themselves. This line exalts inner sovereignty that does not rely on anything external. Someone who prioritizes inner transformation gradually loses the need for outside validation or status and grows disinterested in power struggles that form the backbone of many regimes and markets. For this reason, it is hard to picture a school curriculum that seriously teaches these values, because it would undermine an economic system built on relentless competition for recognition and consumption. It is also revealing that many deep psychotherapeutic models remain on the fringes, while approaches designed to keep people functioning within potentially unhealthy environments receive more institutional backing, or that it is more common to teach about wars and historical conquests than about the self-overcoming that the Dhammapada stresses. Changing this paradigm is extremely subversive because it questions the reliance on external achievements as our primary source of meaning. By insisting that the greatest victory is an inside job, the Dhammapada shakes the foundation of many power structures and invites everyone to explore an autonomy that cannot be purchased or granted by anyone else. Over the past few decades, contemporary science has slowly inched closer to ideas that ancient meditative traditions have held for centuries. Our mental and emotional states can literally reshape our biology. The field of epigenetics has replaced the old deterministic view of genetics by showing that our genes can be switched on or switched off depending on our experiences and psychological states. For instance, chronic stress is linked to the expression of genes connected to inflammation and cellular damage, while calmer states of mind promote the activation of genes tied to regeneration and a stronger immune system. What we are today comes from our thoughts of yesterday. For many Dhammapada practitioners, these words have never been just a metaphor. Research in neuroscience and genetics increasingly supports the idea that our states of consciousness are not mere byproducts, but forces that can influence our physiology at the molecular level. These findings have huge ramifications for areas like medicine and the pharmaceutical industry. If a sizable portion of the population realizes they have internal means to affect their own health, the constant search for external fixes might drop. That could explain why research into contemplative practices and their biological effects sometimes receives less attention or funding than projects aiming to develop high-priced pharmaceuticals. When people learn to foster serenity, focus, and compassion, they are not just acquiring subjective skills. They are making tangible adjustments in their bodies, strengthening self-healing processes. Essentially, the Dhammapada does not offer mere philosophy, but genuine guidance for positively influencing our biology. For many, this perspective is revolutionary. It shows that we are not slaves to our genetic heritage, but co-creators of our physical reality. It does not deny the value of conventional medical treatments. Rather, it places the mind as a key part of the equation. Since everything is interwoven, what we think and feel today can mold not only our mental health, but also how our genes express themselves tomorrow. Certain systems keep pushing a false choice. You either focus on taking care of yourself, labeled as selfish, or you dedicate yourself to others, viewed as virtuous. This artificial split pushes crowds of people to feel guilty when they practice self-care and drained when they try to serve the collective. The Dhammapada, however, exposes this as a false dilemma. How can someone who has not found their own way show the way to others? How can someone who has not freed themselves help others free themselves? The point is that personal well-being does not conflict with contributing to society. In fact, it becomes the foundation for effectively helping others. This message contradicts dogmas that praise personal suffering as proof of commitment, whether in a religious setting that extols martyrdom, a corporate culture that glorifies burnout, or a philanthropic society that encourages endless self-sacrifice. The outcome is always the same. People end up exhausted and unable to provide consistent, caring support to anyone else. Neuroscientific research shows that those who maintain regular self-care and mental balance tend to exhibit stronger activity in the brain regions associated with empathy. People who never take these breaks risk falling into compassion fatigue, becoming numb to others' suffering. In other words, taking care of yourself is not an isolated, selfish act. It is a necessary step if you want enough energy and clarity to assist other people genuinely. This understanding shatters the artificial barrier between selfishness and altruism, revealing that both grow out of the same field of consciousness. Why do so many institutions keep insisting on complete personal sacrifice while devaluing those who aim for a balanced lifestyle? This is likely because masses of worn-out, validation-seeking people are easier to manipulate, whether for consumerism or political goals. The Dhammapada urges us to see through this setup and break the cycle of guilt and exhaustion by pursuing real balance that benefits both the individual and society. Few ideas have been as misunderstood as renunciation in the Buddhist context. Some think it means grim denial, a kind of depressing asceticism. Others assume it is a lack of ambition or a sign of weakness. The Dhammapada clarifies, however, that renunciation is, first and foremost, a sophisticated path to freedom. Giving up lesser pleasures, the wise person experiences the greatest pleasure. This is not some prudish prohibition. It is a conscious choice to trade shallow indulgences for a longer-lasting satisfaction. It is as if each act of letting go of a trivial pleasure redirects inner energy toward a deeper sense of well-being. The global economy depends heavily on fueling endless wants and on stoking discomfort through feelings of lack. Marketing campaigns invent artificial needs, while social media fosters envy and comparison. In this setting, the Dhammapada's version of renunciation is an act of rebellion, not a refusal to enjoy life, but a refusal to fall into traps that lead to endless craving and frustration. Renunciation does not mean rejecting all pleasure. The Dhammapada does not advocate harsh self-denial. Instead, it calls for discernment between pleasures that truly nurture us and those that keep us locked in dependency cycles. It is a selective and strategic type of letting go. Naturally, this mindset clashes with the logic of non-stop consumerism. Occasionally, movements like minimalism are co-opted by the market and sold as a trendy lifestyle, yet they often skip the deeper aspect of inner freedom. After all, it is not profitable for people to stop searching outside for what they can only find within. The mindful path of renunciation, then, does not suggest rejecting the world, but relating to it without sinking into the obsession of acquiring, possessing, and showcasing. This inner freedom is one of the Dhammapada's strongest responses to a system that primarily sees people as consumers. Perhaps the Dhammapada's most daring revelation is its teaching that everything is interconnected. This ancient spiritual view has found surprising support in the discoveries of quantum physics. Researchers such as David Bohm and Erwin Schrödinger, in their studies of quantum phenomena, reached conclusions similar to the Buddhist idea that consciousness and matter cannot be fully separated. The double-slit experiment, for instance, demonstrates that subatomic particles behave differently when observed, challenging the old mechanical worldview, but aligning with the notion that, with our thoughts, we create the world. If consciousness can affect material reality at fundamental levels, then personal transformation is no longer just a subjective matter. According to this perspective, any shift in how we perceive and think resonates throughout the collective fabric. This is explosive for systems that depend on complacency or the belief that individual actions have no broader impact. It is telling that research into consciousness affecting reality or phenomena of non-locality often receives limited support, while more conventional control and surveillance technologies get massive funding. The conflict goes beyond money. It touches on different worldviews. In the old Newtonian model, the observer is passive. In the quantum model, the observer participates in constructing reality. Even though it does not use scientific jargon, the Dhammapada was already saying, "With our thoughts, we create the world." It is not just a figure of speech. It is a call to recognize every individual's role as a co-creator in the web of existence. Records of social revolutions show that many external changes simply swap out one form of oppression for another. The Dhammapada suggests a deeper root, not just reforming structures, but addressing the root cause, which is collective states of consciousness. The idea is that external realities mirror the total of our inner states. Instead of focusing solely on political or economic reforms, the Buddhist text emphasizes an inner conversion. If this happens on a large scale, new social arrangements emerge naturally. What we are is the result of what we think. Complex systems theorists like Ervin Laszlo talk about tipping points, moments when transformation becomes irreversible after hitting critical mass. Ken Wilber describes emergence as the process by which, when many individuals surpass a certain threshold of consciousness, the entire system reorganizes at a higher level. These scientific and philosophical ideas echo Dhammapada's message. If enough people adopt a more liberated state of mind, collective reality changes. This does not mean ignoring external action, but rather integrating it with self-reflection. Social and revolutionary movements that do not address personal growth often replicate the same pathologies they aimed to fight. On the other hand, examples like Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. show how deep inner work inspired non-violent, inclusive strategies, yielding changes that went beyond the usual conflict-based approach. The Dhammapada points out that lasting change grows out of awakened minds, which do not act out of hate or revenge, but from clarity and compassion. Once you realize there is no real separation between oppressor and oppressed, everything about how you approach conflict shifts. In this sense, external revolutions become a natural outcome of an inner revolution. Possibly the most subversive aspect of the Dhammapada is its assertion that every person can access immediately and directly the universal intelligence that permeates the cosmos. This does not depend on elaborate rituals or so-called enlightened intermediaries. all it requires is quieting the conditioned mind and seeing reality clearly. This insight challenges any system that insists the sacred or ultimate knowledge lies beyond our reach, available only to an elite, or mediated by institutions. Look within, you are the Buddha. This statement threatens institutionalized religions and spiritual hierarchies because it teaches that the source of all wisdom lies dormant in each individual. Today, various advanced studies in contemplative neuroscience analyze how deep meditative states activate networks in the brain associated with a sense of unity and sudden insight. This is direct knowledge that goes beyond ordinary analytical thinking. Essentially, the Dhammapada outlines methods to tap into this inner intelligence that, according to the text, has always been there, only veiled by our everyday distractions. We come full circle to the main points raised throughout this text. No real transformation happens only in the external world, and the individual mind is far from being an isolated box. Once we awaken to this reality, we see that everything is interwoven, including our processes of healing, social evolution, and cosmic understanding. Each of us holds the innate ability to awaken to this essential nature, transcending our conditioning and accessing the universal intelligence that has guided great teachers throughout history. This journey begins by realizing that once the mind is quiet and observed without judgment, profound insights reveal themselves. One of the best ways to encourage this connection is through meditation. We have developed a set of audio tools to help you reach this higher state of consciousness. To learn more and get immediate access, click the link on the screen or in the comments. If this video resonated with you, write in the comments. It made sense to me.